Welcome to HFY Stories. Please subscribe to the channel. Your one click means the world to me. The blue pulse vanished beneath Callum's fingertips. He stopped breathing with the probe still buried inside the open casing, one careless movement away from turning an ancient machine into scrap. Across the metal table, the armored woman leaned closer while a red status lamp blinked against her face. "Did you kill it?" she asked. "Not yet." That answer earned him 3 seconds of silence. Callum eased the probe backward and stared at the exposed machinery. He had been awake for most of the station cycle, his shoulders hurt, and 2 armed guards waited beyond the sealed door. Somehow, none of that bothered him as much as the microscopic strip of blackened metal under his work light. A few hours earlier, he had never seen this room. He had been repairing a coolant regulator in his workshop when 4 enormous aliens arrived without warning. The station door had struck the floor hard enough to scatter bolts from his bench. Their grey skin, ember-colored eyes, and plated armor told him immediately that arguing would achieve nothing. One of them had checked a wrist display. "Callum Ward." Callum had slowly put down his wrench. "That depends on whether I owe you money." The alien had not reacted. "You have been summoned." "For what?" "You will be told aboard the cruiser." That had been the entire explanation. They had taken him through the trading station before he could collect his coat. Merchants moved out of their path. Dock workers suddenly discovered urgent reasons to stare at the floor. At the outer clamp waited a scarred black warship large enough to make the station tremble whenever its engines adjusted thrust. Callum had spent the walk through it, cataloguing useful details, because the alternative was imagining his execution. Armed troops. Heavy internal bulkheads. Battle repairs across the walls. A crest repeated on armor and doors. A burning star enclosed by a hooked blade. Then his escorts brought him into a chamber where one woman stood waiting. She was taller than Callum by nearly a head. Dark ceremonial armor covered her from throat to boots, with narrow gold markings worked into the plates. She did not need the guards around her to appear dangerous. The guards were watching her. That told Callum more than any crown could have. Her gaze moved over his stained work clothes. "So this is the mechanic." Usually people ask, before dragging me onto military ships. One guard shifted. The woman raised 2 fingers, and he became still again. "I was told you have repaired equipment your own specialists considered unsalvageable. I've made bad machines work longer than they deserved." Something faint moved at one corner of her mouth. Then she approached a pedestal. Resting, there was a curved object made from metal so dark that the chamber lights barely reflected from it. Thin channels ran along its length, flickering with weak blue illumination. Callum understood enough to keep his hands to himself. The woman lifted it carefully. "This is called Ash Crown. 11 rulers before me carried it." There was no pride in her voice when she said the name. Only strain. "It stopped answering me 3 days ago. My engineers opened the outer housing and refused to continue. They believe further interference would be desecration." Callum looked from her to the failing device. "And you want someone with fewer religious objections." "I want someone who does not already believe failure is inevitable." She offered Ash Crown to him. Callum hesitated, then accepted it with both hands. Warmth spread into his palms. Real warmth. Not enough to burn, but far more than inert metal should have carried. He rotated the object and found a recessed seam. "Whatever your engineers call this thing," he said, "it has joints, conductors, and access points." Her eyes narrowed. "You believe you understand it already." "No, I believe somebody built it." That distinction seemed to interest her. She gave him until the ship's next sunrise cycle. If he succeeded, he would go home. If he failed without causing damage, he would still go home. If he made the problem worse, the consequences became noticeably less specific. Callum requested a bench. Then he requested his own tools. The second demand caused more confusion than the first. Their equipment was magnificent and almost useless to him, designed for hands broader than his and interfaces he could barely interpret. His dented tool case arrived from the station under guard. Only then did he begin. Under the outer shell, Ash Crown was a masterpiece. Layered conductors, tiny compensators, self-correcting circuitry that redirected around failing pathways. Callum slowly stopped thinking about the soldiers outside. Machines were easier than people. A machine could be ancient, expensive, sacred, terrifying, or all four. Eventually, it still had to move energy from one place to another. He found residue near an internal junction. Then more beneath it. The self-maintenance network had been compensating for a degrading connection so successfully that the defect remained hidden. Each correction had kept the weapon functioning while the original fault worsened. Callum almost laughed. Alien Royal technology had developed the same bad habit as half the station equipment he serviced. It kept pretending the real problem could wait. The chamber door opened while he was cleaning the contact bed. His hand jerked. "Careful," he muttered. The Queen entered alone. Callum glanced at her. "I assumed rulers had people to watch repairs for them. I dismissed them." "Why?" "They kept looking at your hands instead of the weapon." She pulled over a chair. Callum stared. "You're staying." "I have spent 3 days being told that nothing can be done. I would like to watch someone attempt something." So he worked with her beside him. At first he explained only what mattered. "This junction is dirty. Dirty. Corroded. The system keeps routing around it, which is why nobody saw the original failure." She leaned forward. The restoration circuits concealed the damage. They hid it from themselves, too. Her questions became more precise after that. Callum stopped simplifying. He showed her where energy should travel, where resistance had increased, and why temporary corrections had accelerated the damage. She followed closely enough that when he extended his hand without looking, she placed the narrow, gripping tool into his palm before he asked. Hours thinned away. The residue came free. A damaged connector did not. Callum searched his own kit and found a small alloy pin he had been carrying for years. He shortened it, filed it, tested the fit, removed it, adjusted it again, then locked it into the damaged junction. The Queen watched every movement. "That piece came from your station." "My toolbox." "You are placing common repair metal inside Ash Crown. You can call it something ceremonial after it starts working." This time, she definitely smiled. Then they reached the final circuit. Callum studied the pattern twice. A recognition system was embedded within it, much more sophisticated than anything else he had found. He withdrew his hands. "This last section is different." Her smile disappeared. "How?" "It is waiting for a specific user." She rose. Callum pointed to the contact plate. "If I close the circuit myself, there's a chance the system decides I'm trying to claim control." For the first time since he had met her, the Queen looked genuinely alarmed. "You must not do that." "I wasn't planning to." "If Ash Crown interprets your touch as an attempt at ownership, our law would treat it as a challenge to my bloodline." Callum looked at the guards beyond the door, then back at her. "That feels like information I should have received several hours ago. It has never been repaired by an outsider." Apparently, that tradition had a flaw. Neither of them laughed. Callum moved aside. You close it. She approached the table. He positioned her hand above the exposed contacts without touching her. Pressure here. Hold it until the lower channel responds. Then connect these 2 points. Her fingers settled into place. Callum watched the dead blue channels. Now. She pressed. Nothing happened. A second passed. Then another. Callum felt his stomach tighten. A tiny spark snapped beneath her thumb. Blue light raced through the first channel. Then the second. Then every line across Ash Crown ignited at once. The chamber filled with a deep mechanical tone. The Queen's shoulders went rigid. Ash Crown brightened in her hands, its energy no longer stuttering or fading. The pulse became even, steady, powerful. The main door opened violently. 4 guards entered with weapons ready. They made it 2 steps. Then every one of them saw Ash Crown. The first guard dropped immediately to 1 knee. The others followed. Armor struck the deck in 4 heavy impacts. Callum looked between them. What exactly did I just repair? No one answered him. The Queen did not seem capable of answering yet. She was staring at the weapon. Her thumb traced one shining channel. It knows me again. Something in her voice made Callum stop treating the moment like a successful maintenance test. He learned the rest soon afterward. Ash Crown was more than an heirloom. Its recognition of the reigning monarch was part of the foundation of her authority. If it rejected her publicly, rivals could claim that her right to command had ended. 3 days of silence from the weapon had already begun producing dangerous questions inside the fleet. If the failure had continued, those questions would not have remained questions. Callum sat slowly on the edge of the workbench. So everyone outside this room has been waiting to see whether your government survives. The Queen lowered Ash Crown. Yes. And nobody thought the mechanic should know that. I needed you repairing a machine, not carrying the weight of my throne. Callum stared at her. That might be the first sensible decision anyone has made tonight. She walked toward him. The guards remained kneeling. Callum expected another command, perhaps a reward, perhaps an official declaration of gratitude. Instead, she stopped directly in front of him. No one of my line has received this service from an outsider. I replaced one connector. You restored what holds my fleet together. I really would prefer we call it a connector. Her expression softened. Then she bent down and kissed him. Callum forgot every prepared response. The guards became perfectly motionless. When she stepped back, he remained sitting on the bench, staring at her. I'm going to need an explanation. In my people's older law, that gesture places you beneath my personal protection. He blinked. That is how you mark protected engineers. That is how a sovereign marks someone no member of her forces may threaten. Callum looked toward the kneeling soldiers. Not one met his eyes. Apparently, she had not been speaking symbolically. Several hours later, the same cruiser corridors felt completely different. The soldiers who had stared at Callum during his arrival now moved aside before he reached them. Some touched fists to their armor, others bowed their heads. The Queen walked beside him carrying Ash Crown, its restored light running smoothly through the dark metal. At the docking clamp, she stopped. Callum could see the familiar station through the airlock window. You will come aboard again, she said. Her tone left very little room for uncertainty. Callum studied her for a moment. I have a feeling refusing would involve another damaged door. That can be arranged. He laughed despite himself. Then I'll probably come back. The inner hatch sealed between them. Minutes later, Callum crossed into the station alone. A maintenance crew was still working near his workshop when he returned. Someone had propped his broken door upright against the wall, and the wrench he had dropped earlier still lay where it had bounced across the deck. Callum picked it up. Behind the station glass, the black cruiser released its docking clamps. For one brief second, a narrow blue glow appeared through one of its departing windows. Then the warship turned toward open space, and Callum stood beside his ruined doorway with the wrench hanging loose in his hand.